So, back into our next session, slightly different, so we like to mix things up so that you are constantly engaged throughout the day. So, before we welcome the next speakers on stage, we're going to play a little video which will set the tone, hopefully, for you. It's something a little different. It's a little bit about content, so hopefully you will be inspired by this content. You may have seen some of this work before, and I'm sure you'll agree it's fantastic, but a little tease for you, the next session does have someone who has recently won an Oscar. So let's play the video.
Tra-la-la, tra-la, tra-la, la. No más caso.
Say my name.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to introduce you to Steve Golin, the founder and managing director of Anonymous Content. I've known Steve for about 25 years, and I actually consider him a real friend, not an LA type. So I'm just going to give you a brief bit of bio. I'm going to read it because it's too long, and I'm never going to remember it. So Steve, you've produced over 50 films and television projects, including Spotlight, which won Best Picture this year at the Academy Awards. You've produced Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu's films The Revenant and Babel. The Revenant was also nominated for this year's Academy Award. And both of which won Golden Globes. You've received an Oscar for Best Picture, and some of the others being John Malkovich, directed by Spike Jonze. Michel Gondry's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and Deborah Granik's Winter's Bone, which was nominated for Best Picture in the 2011 Academy Awards. And let's not leave out David Lynch's Wild at Heart, which won Palme d'Or at the 1990 Cannes Awards. There's more. You've executive produced the HBO series True Detective, which had 11 Emmy nominations and 5 wins, as well as USA drama Mr. Robot, which won Best Drama Series at the 2015 Golden Globes. I'm not going to go through all the awards for the commercials business, as well as the music videos business, because we probably won't have enough time. And something that you guys need to know about Steve is that he has one strategy and one criteria, and that's that it's got to be good creatively, and it's got to be great, and that people have got to appreciate it. Anyway, 30 years ago, you started a company called Propaganda Films, which made music video, commercials, television, and film. What was the idea behind that company, and why did you start it?
Well, I mean, during that era, I wanted to be in the movie business, and
I started out producing some low-budget movies in the early days of the home video boom in the early to mid-'80s. And through a bizarre sequence of events, my ex-partner, Yanni Sigvatsan, and myself, we stumbled into the music video business. So in 1986, we formed Propaganda Films with 4 directors, Nigel Dick, Greg Gold, Dominic Sena, and David Fincher, in order to get in the music video business and to use that as a springboard to get us into the movie business. And we were in the right place at the right time, and that was really in the heyday of MTV, and the business took off. And shortly after doing some fairly high-profile music videos, the phone started ringing from advertising agencies asking us if we could do commercials. And we didn't know what we didn't know, so we said yes. And we hired an executive producer that had been in the business, and we started in the commercial business. And that business really took off in a big way. At that time, in the mid-'80s, the commercial business and the movie business was being very, very heavily influenced by the music video business. It was a real transition in terms of the type of content that was being created. So we were a big part of that in the 80s. We were probably, Propaganda was the dominant company for sure in music videos and commercials in the 80s. And during that period, we got into the motion picture and television business where Yanni and I produced Twin Peaks and 90210 and a few other shows.
So at the time, we used to call you the farm for directors. You would always cultivate directors. So David Fincher, Spike Jonze, Michael Bay. Who else?
Simon West, Anton Fuqua, Gore Verbinski. There were quite a few directors. It was that was really the claim to fame of that company, was developing talent. And really, even today, we're still in the talent development business. So we would find young filmmakers at that point, develop them, and with the idea of them transitioning across all, we didn't call it platforms then, but it was platforms. You know, it was music videos, commercials, motion picture. And at that time, most filmmakers didn't aspire to be in the television business, which is a big, big change now. I think we can talk about television in a little while, but I think now almost all filmmakers, Martin Scorsese, Ridley Scott, David Fincher, a lot of the top filmmakers are very interested in doing television.
So after so many years of Propaganda, why did you start Anonymous?
Well, what happened is that Yanni and I sold Propaganda to Polygram, the record company that was owned by Philips, the Dutch conglomerate. And then in 1999, Philips sold Polygram to Seagram's. And then my bosses, who was the chairman of Polygram and the head of Film Entertainment, were both fired unceremoniously on one day. And then shortly after that, they sold the company to another venture, and I was fired. And so in 1999, I started Anonymous Content.
Got it. And could you describe the makeup of your business today versus the business you started at Propaganda?
Yeah, I think we're much more, today, we started in 99, which was a very unfortunate time to start the business, because the first week that we started the business, there was the advertisers, the Screen Actors Guild of America went on strike against the advertisers. And in my infamous wisdom, I thought it would last a few weeks, and it lasted 10 months. And it almost put us out of business before we got in business. And then right after that, there was the dot-com bubble burst, and there was a big recession in advertising in the early 2000s. And then there was 9/11, so the beginning of the company was extremely challenging. And it was a real struggle for survival. But the way the company is designed today is much more about talent management and television production. We still do about 180 TV commercials a year. We represent about 35 directors internationally. We have strategic alliances in France and Germany and the UK with other production entities where we represent their directors in the US and they represent our directors there. But the talent management business, we have 25 talent managers and 500 clients, writers, directors, and actors. So we're a much more diversified business. And I think right now, at this moment, the most exciting part of our business is one-hour drama production, high-quality drama. We got our first show really was True Detective that we did about 4 years ago. Since then, we have The Nick, which is the Steven Soderbergh, Clive Owen show that we produce. And we have 14 shows either on air or in production. Mr. Robot was a big success for us. We're shooting season 2 right now. We just got picked up for season 3. We're doing a show for Epix called Berlin Station that we just finished shooting in Berlin. We're doing The Alienist, which was a big book in the late 90s with Cary Fukunaga, who directed True Detective, who we manage, is going to direct for TNT. And we have 2 pilots at Hulu right now that we've just completed shooting and see if we get picked up. And, I mean, it's an exciting time because there's all, with short form, serialized stuff for the web and wireless is very interesting, and that's something that we're really focusing on.
Yeah, when we were talking yesterday, you talked about how the business of advertising has changed as relates to your business. What do you think that is from your perspective?
Well, I was saying to you yesterday that there's quite a bit of work that we're doing directly with brands where that was never the case 5 years ago. I would say now 25% of our work is directly with the brand as opposed to going through an agency. That's not to say, we think the agencies play a vital role in managing that process, and it's a lot, but a lot of clients are bringing that in-house. So we're doing quite a bit more of that, and we're also doing a lot more long-form content. We just did a film for Qualcomm called Lifeline. It's a 25-minute film that we did in conjunction with Ogilvy in New York, and I think they're very pleased with the way the film came out. And that was interesting because there's a writer-director that we represent named Armando Bo, who won the Oscar 2 years ago for screenplay for Birdman in conjunction with the other writers. And he wrote and directed that film, and it's a 20-minute film, and I think we delivered about 30 different cut-down versions for different uses on different platforms. But I think they're very pleased with that film. It was just delivered about a week ago.
So let's talk a little bit more about how the process works. We've all kind of worked together in making advertising, and now we know that television commercials are not necessarily the general direction that we should be going. Just that point about where the agency fits in, does that really work for you? And more importantly, how does the client relationship work when you're actually able to have a solid relationship with the advertiser or the marketer?
I think it's great to have both. I mean, or either or neither. I mean, I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it. I think it depends on the Qualcomm job. Ogilvy brought us the job. We had a relationship with them. They trusted us, and they knew we were in a unique situation to manage writers, be able to put actors in it, and successfully package that project. We put Olivia Munn in it. They were very happy with that get. So, it just varies. But I think now what we're really trying to achieve, I think that the reason that was successful was because they came to us early and we developed it with them. I think one of the criticisms that we have of the way the agency business works traditionally for commercials is the kind of triple bid, big race situation where there's not enough time to collaborate. The directors that we represent are very clever. 25% of our directors are ex-advertising creatives that wanted to make more money doing something else. So they became commercial directors. And I think by including them much earlier in the process, before the concept is fully sold through to the client, I think we could get a lot better product. And I also think that if there was not the ridiculous time pressure and red tape on the agency client side, where we are waiting for the job to award, and then the job awards, and we're behind the 8 ball. And the job would be 20% better if the client would give us the job 2 weeks before they do now. They just wait till the last second.
So I don't mean to be insulting to anybody, but do you feel that if you could have a more direct relationship, that you would be able to get to quicker decisions, that you would actually be able to make it better? Because again, as I said earlier, quality has been really the credo about what every company that Steve has had. And the work has always been spectacular. So that relationship, not necessarily just to disintermediate disintermediate for the sense of disintermediating, but to make the process smoother.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, it also depends on what the relationship between the agency and the client is, because I think that what I've noticed over the last 10 or 15 years is that that relationship is more strained and there's less trust from the client to the agency. And I think that what we need is a lot of trust and the ability to work together. And oftentimes, we put an enormous amount of effort into procuring one commercial package. Generally, we don't do one commercial, we do a package. But it's an enormous amount of work, and there are 2 other companies that are doing an equal amount of work, and only one of us is getting the job. And I personally think it's an extremely inefficient system. But I think also what's happening too is that a lot of the ideas that we get from the agencies are half-baked. And then they come to us and really want our director to fully bake the idea and then send it to the client. And I think that it used to be that the agency would recommend to the client one of the 3 companies. And now I think what's happening a lot is the agency is presenting all 3 pitches with no real recommendation, and the client is just picking. And it doesn't seem like the most efficient way to do business.
Yeah, and it also feels like that your other core businesses, your film and television business, are closer married to your commercials business. What are the other projects that you're doing outside? Well, you talked about your television project. You're making a lot of film at this point compared to television and commercials.
The television business is our biggest business now, with the 14 shows. And what I didn't realize when we got in the business is really how much work the television business is. Because, in the movie business, you have one story that you're telling. In the television business, you're doing 8, 10, 12 hours of content. So and it moves a lot faster than the movie business. So there's countless revisions on television shows, on scripts, and on cuts of episodes. So that's, it's really, really a lot of work. But it's a more interesting business. It's all different forms of storytelling. That's why we're all really in this business, to tell stories. And the ability to tell a story over 8 or 10 or 12 hours is a lot more interesting, even, I think, than movies. Just the idea of, and you've seen this migration, because the movie business has become a business primarily of tentpole movies, superhero movies. You have, giant franchises that do another version of the same movie over and over again, whether it's, X-Men or Star Wars or Twilight or, Hunger Games. And we're really not in that business. We're kind of more in the one-off business, which is a lot harder and a lot less lucrative and sometimes less satisfying when it doesn't work. So it's really a question of, in the TV space, particularly in the cable space where we primarily are, you have the ability to do these shows and figure the show out over a much longer period of time. And it's really about telling these great stories. And there's been a tremendous migration of high-end talent away from the movie business, because in the movie business, drama is a dirty word. Nobody wants to make a drama. So all the good drama has migrated out of the movie business into the television business. And that high-end talent that wants to do something that's satisfying can do it. In the old days, television was a 10-month-a-year job, 22 episodes for network. Now we do 8, 10, 12 episodes. It's 3 or 4 month commitment for the talent. So they have the other 8 months a year to pursue other things that maybe are more lucrative or different. But they have the ability to do these dramas that are very satisfying. And I think that, when you look at it, you see Mad Men and Breaking Bad were really the kind of transitional projects that lent that credibility to television.
So in the room that we're visiting today is really about media and media agencies. It would seem, based on the conversation we've had thus far, that a closer relationship with the media agencies, where you're actually starting to understand who the consumer is that you're meant to speak to, and getting some sort of measurement and understanding of the platforms and how effective the platforms might be very helpful.
Yeah, I think that there's tremendous opportunity to do branded content of all different types. In I think 2001, we did the original BMW films that we did with Fallon and BMW. And in that case, you're right, we had an amazing relationship both with Fallon and with BMW, with Jim McDowell, who was the head of it at the time, and Pat McKenna, who was the, I guess, brand manager. And that was a collaboration. It wasn't a competitive situation. We developed that with them from the ground up. And that was probably the most interesting collaboration. And I think we have some film to show also. I think that a lot of the stuff that we're doing now is bigger collaborations with longer films that we're making that, there are many, many different versions of this. And I think we're going to show at some point which are we showing first?
Well, we're going to show Nike first. You did this spot with Alejandro as a commercial director. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah.
Droga para pion.
Another amazing short commercial. This is actually a really interesting spot. Steve identified yesterday, and we got a hold of it, that Alejandro did with P&G and Wyden. We're going to look at the commercial, but what's most important about it is what would you do with this idea today?
Right.
So let's take a look at it and discuss that.
Okay.
可以起床喽，该上学啦。Time to get up, baby.
Come on. Up you can.
Vamos que eu vou fazer café da manhã gostoso pra você.
Hurry up.
just have to say one thing. It's an idea that affects us all. You know, we all have moms. You know, I'm a new dad myself, and watching how my wife works with our daughter is just amazing. So what would you do with this idea today?
Well, I think that there would have been a big opportunity to expand this idea into something more meaningful, whether, you know, we shot quite a bit of other stuff for this, but I think that there's an ability to look at something like this to turn it into a TV show or turn it into other branded content. I think, you know, it's a unique idea, and when you get a brief like this and you get to work with Wyden, who has got a great relationship with the client, and there's a lot of trust, and there's a lot of money. That was a big job, and it was a high-profile job. It was 4 years ago for the last Olympics, and you know, those kind of opportunities and getting involved really early on now. I think that there's just so much more opportunity across platforms to create so much more content. I think we would have probably tried to do a bunch of non-scripted things about moms and athletes before the Olympics. There could have been a lot more content. That could have been specific to different countries, to different athletes. That could have been amazing. And, you know, really it's about early collaboration with the brands or with the media companies or with the agencies, whoever is the steward of that brand. But I think that there's, you know, with smart people and creative people, there's tremendous opportunity to do things that are very, very exciting. And I think this is an extremely challenging and exciting time in our business.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think everybody has to be open to change. You know, we all know that it's really hard to find who it is we need to talk to, who we're meant to change behavior with. Is there any way you would choose to engage with the community any differently today?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a bandwidth issue of how much time do we have. You know, we don't have the resources to be interacting with all the brands and the media companies, and that's why the agencies have always been the conduit to that. We have, you know, sales reps in every market and those relationships. And, you know, the agencies understand the brand strategy a lot better than we do. So, you know, it's challenging, but we think there's tremendous opportunity to create content like this, and it's really a question of just figuring out how do we access it and how do we get involved early. Like on the BMW thing or the Qualcomm thing or the P&G thing, it really was a real collaboration between us and the brands, and in some cases the agency, in order to create that. But it's something that started really at the brief stage, as opposed to them baking the whole thing themselves and then going out with it. So, I mean, we have to really look at how we can change our business, and I think it's just going to involve, you know, bringing more staff on, people that have that experience, and then people can interact, you know, with the CMOs or whatever person at the brand is the appropriate person.
You know, it's interesting in our town, not as a place, but as a category in Hollywood. It's an industry that manages up like no other industry I've ever seen in my life. But interestingly, it doesn't manage up to management. It manages up to creativity. You know, it's the great writers, it's the great producers and directors, the people that even the CEOs aspire to have relationships with. Right. We should mimic that in our industry at this point. We should be looking for greatness, not just quantification. Look, I just want to thank Steve for being here today. LA's a long way away, and something you guys need to know is that the creativity that you've seen from Steve is just a moment in his career. And more importantly, as I've known him over these years, it's his first passion. So I want to thank you for coming and being a part of this, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you.